A very, very good evening, trailblazers, change makers, and champions of a reimagined future. Namaste, my name is Melanie Pace, and it gives me immense pleasure to be your host today and to welcome you all here to the Economic Times Reimagining LeadHERship presented by Salesforce, where women are at the forefront of redefining leadership, where power meets purpose, and where the her in leadership takes center stage. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure everybody is aware that today is not just an event. Well, it is a powerful statement that the future of leadership is defined by three unwavering F's, which is fierce, fearless, and most importantly, female. Well, tonight we stand at the threshold of a new era, an era shaped by women who don't wait for a seat at the table. Well, they build their own. These are women who don't merely break glass ceilings. They absolutely shatter them, reimagine the room, and then elevate others as they rise. Let's get one thing straight, that today is not about titles, it's not about trophies, and it's not about symbolism. But it is about power. The power to lead with intention, the power to challenge convention, and the power to shape what's next. Tonight, we honor that power and those who yield it with vision, courage, and purpose. Here we celebrate the women working on the front lines of reinvention, leaders that dare, disrupt, and deliver. Tonight, you will witness stories that ignite, strategies that empower, and connections that catalyze real change. So, ladies and gentlemen, get ready for powerful networking, unfiltered wisdom, and a collective call to rise not alone, but together. And this is just a gentle reminder that tomorrow's leadership doesn't begin someday or tomorrow. It begins today. It begins right here, right now, with you all. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin this empowering journey by bringing some energy in the room, because nobody else is going to clap for us, right? We need to clap for ourselves. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, you all deserve it. Wow. This is the energy that we want. This is the momentum that we are looking for. And on that note, it is time for some true inspiration, isn't it? Well, let me humbly invite a trailblazer in every sense of the word. Well, she made history as the first woman to chair State Bank of India in its over 200-year legacy. Known for her fearless leadership, absolutely, that deserves a huge round of applause. Well, she is known for her fearless leadership, bold reforms, and human-centric approach. She continues to shape the narrative of modern leadership in her current role as President and CEO, South Asia Salesforce. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have the iconic, the unstoppable Padma Shri, Miss Arundhati Bhattacharya. Woo! Ma'am, an honor? Absolutely.
Hi, good evening. So good to see all of y'all. You know, it's great that we have this many women leaders in the room. One of the reasons why Salesforce is doing an event like this is to sort of tell you about the evolving role of leadership that we have. By the way, I was asked to speak for 10 minutes and then have a 10-minute fireside chat with Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik, which I think is not doing justice to the event. So I'll speak for only 2 minutes, and the rest of the time we will have the fireside chat with Mr. Pattanaik. So if there are chairs to be brought on the stage, if you should bring them up straight away, because, yeah, abhi dal do. So because we can straight away get into the talk, because you'll find that very empowering and very interesting. So the only thing that I want to leave you with is that the shape of leadership today is changing very, very rapidly. With the onset of generative AI, many of the jobs that were being done earlier, that is anything that is repetitive, anything that is, that doesn't require real human touch, these jobs will, in a way, slowly be taken over by agents, by digital agents, okay? What will really be required is the EQ factor, is the human touch, is the empathy, is the ability to listen, and listen not only to the words, but to the body language, to the inner meanings. And believe me, these are all strengths that women bring to the table because of the millennia of the way that we have been brought up, okay? So to that extent, you have a far brighter future and a far better, potential for coming straight up there where we had to fight many a battle because earlier the style of leadership, as we had a workshop before, as Devdutt very rightly said, that it was a Western style, which is all about a shark tank, where, sharks eat, the small ones get eaten by the bigger ones, and those get eaten by the even bigger ones. And we want to move it to the Eastern cultural side, which talks more about Lakshmi's lotus pond. The lotus pond, which is something that is very nurturing, that keeps giving back. It takes and gives back, takes and gives back. It's not a story of extraction, it's a story of exchange. That is our legacy. We already have it in us culturally. And therefore, I would like to welcome Mr. Pattanaik on the dais. You all know him. I don't think he needs any introduction, and maybe we'll just exchange this so as to make it easier for us. Yeah. Please take a seat. So what I would like to do is to get straight into the narrative that I would like him to talk about. See, one thing, Mr. Pattanaik, is, Devdutt, yes. One thing, Devdutt, yeah, I should be calling you Devdutt, I know you quite well now. See, the one thing that I have noticed in the Eastern culture, because mythology makes up so much of, our mindset as we grow up, and not only in the Eastern culture, even in the Western culture for that matter, is that women are always portrayed as people in need of rescue. Women are portrayed as people who are dependent. And it's the men who are the rescuers, it's the men who play the main part. And that may have been the reason, one of the reasons could have been because earlier brute strength was required. We were hunter-gatherers and brute strength was required. Today it is no longer so. It's not brute strength that is so much required. But there are many stories that you were just telling us in the earlier session in our mythology that we don't know about, where, it's not a question of brute strength, where you women come across as equally strong. So, I would request you to tell us some of those stories, I think, stories are things we remember. Platitudes are not stuff that can be remembered. So I would request you to please tell us some of those stories. And you have the floor.
Thank you. When we talk of mythology, when I read a biblical story, I have a story of Adam and Eve, and I have a very clear story of Eve being seen as the one who eats the apple first. When I read Greek mythology, you have a character called Pandora, who sort of opens the box and all kinds of trouble happen. And so both these stories, one is of Eve and one is of Pandora, shapes Western culture. And that comes into India through academic institutions. So all our humanities professors are actually reading those books. And when they start picking up Indian books, they start putting that template into an Indian template. And as a result, I have noticed that people, like for example, the idea of the damsel in distress. Now, damsel in distress this concept doesn't exist in India. Let me give you an example, and it's a very startling example. And it's really my mother's name, which is Savitri. So we have heard of Sati Savitri types, right? Everybody will tell you about the Sati Savitri type. And whenever I've heard this, I start laughing because I've actually read the story of Sati Savitri. And this is the story. Now tell me how much of what is a Sati Savitri type? Savitri is a princess who is very educated. So educated that the men are afraid of marrying her. They're like, oh, she's too good for us. We do not want to. They run away from her. So the father says, okay, you choose whoever you want to marry. You go on a chariot. So she travels across the world looking at all the men in the world and to decide who is worthy of her. And she selects a woodcutter. A woodcutter. She says, I want to marry the woodcutter. The father says, but woodcutter. And she says, you told me to make a choice. I've made the choice. Now the father wants to break the marriage. So he goes and checks with the astrologer. The astrologer says, this man is going to die in 1 year. They go back to her and say, no, don't marry her. And she says, but it's my problem. Why is it your problem? I have chosen him. I don't mind if he's going to live for 1 year. It's my choice. And the father agrees. 1 year later, death comes. And what does she do? She negotiates with death and gets her husband back. This is Sati Savitri types. Not quite what Ekta Kapoor thinks. So when you actually read the story, the story is very different. There is Nala Damayanti story which is told, and Nala Damayanti is the story of Nala, a great king, and the beautiful man and a beautiful woman fall in love with each other. Even the gods are jealous because she's so beautiful, and they all are jealous of her happiness, and they want to destroy her happiness because it's a perfect couple. They're the perfect couple. So the gods put a curse, and the husband loses all his fortune. He loses his wealth, he loses power, he loses everything. And he goes into depression. And the story is a very classical example of a man going into depression. And he feels like a loser. He says, don't worry, we will manage something. And he tries to do some job. He tries to capture some birds. And instead of capturing the birds steal his clothes and run away. So basically, it's a metaphor for no matter what he does, everything fails. And he loses self-worth, self-respect. But she's standing by him saying, it's okay, we'll figure it out, But he can't bear to see her and thinks that I have failed as a husband. So while she's sleeping in the forest, he runs away. Saying that at least without me, she'll find someone else to marry and she'll be happy, so he runs away. And she is distressed. So imagine this lady in the middle of the forest, left all alone. She doesn't resent him. She understands what's going on. She goes back to her father's house, and the story is about how she finds him. And where is he found? He goes to the one place where nobody will look for a man. He hides in the kitchen. But he's a great cook. He's such a good cook that she tastes his food and she said, in that kitchen is the husband. So this is how we have a story of a woman who looks at her husband and she brings him out of the kitchen and says, it's okay, I respect you. You don't have to be successful all the time. Now, this is a story of a very strong person, but it is not told in this way. When people write the story, they make her sound like a tragedy, but here is someone who is dealing with a husband who has a nervous breakdown, and there she is the pillar of strength. This story is told in the Mahabharata to tell the husbands that the only reason you are surviving is because of your wife. She is the line uses, she is the raft that prevents you from sinking. There are 5 of them. So 5 husbands depend on this one raft, otherwise they would have sunk. Now these stories are not told in this way. It's how you narrate the story where magic happens.
I think Prabha is also supposed to be part of the chat. So Prabha Narasimhan, if you will also come up and join us, please. And more than, the questions that I am asking, Prabha, the next question to Devdutt should be from you. Please come and join us. Let's have a round of applause for Prabha. Prabha is the MD of Colgate, and therefore, somebody who's been in a position where, she's exercised a lot of the kinds of leadership that we are talking about. So Prabha, you could go ahead and ask Devdutt whatever next that you would like to hear from him.
Thank you so much. I'm going to thoroughly embarrass my 16-year-old daughter who's sitting here and ask you, saying if you had to have some advice from Indian mythology for all the young people in this room, what would it be?
My advice would, I don't give advice.
That's mythology giving the advice
That's
through
true.
you.
The best advice I give is please buy my books. All authors have only one advice. But no, seriously, I think one of the things that else, when I do student workshops and lots of these, girls' school, boys' schools, and nowadays still that exists, I don't know why, but I talk to young girls and I ask this question, if I give you Sita and Draupadi, and many of them are familiar with the story, I said, who do you think is a feminist? And it's a question I ask people, who is a feminist, Sita or what do you think? And typically the answer is Draupadi, because she is aggressive, she's loud, she's demanding, her hair is open, it's very dramatic, right, with the hair falling. But then I ask the question, whose children become kings? Whose children become kings? Draupadi is loud, she demands revenge, she's angry, she wants revenge, but in the course of the war, all her children die. She gets a revenge, she ties her hair, but all her children die. Sita keeps quiet, she's never speaking. She's observing how people disappoint her. She's always quiet. Both her children become kings. Even today, royal families trace their descent to Love or Kush. We sometimes have to be loud, but sometimes we have to be smart. And I think this story, which is written 2,000 years ago, when I ask questions to people about Sita and Draupadi, and what is apparent and what is the inner layer of meaning, which ma'am, you were talking about, the meaning layers, which ChatGPT may not be able to find, is where magic happens. Because the same story, you look at it and it makes you think. And I think this is what I want the younger generation. Don't just read the story. Think. Ask the questions. Don't look at the obvious. Don't allow received wisdom to be accepted. Question it without being combative. Question it with curiosity. I think curiosity is where magic lies. I was curious about Sati Savitri. I was curious about Damayanti. I was curious about Sita because I said, but she doesn't look quiet in the story. I want to give you another example of Sita. It's one of my favorite characters because I was doing a workshop for someone and it happened, I suddenly realized a structure in the Ramayana. Sita makes 5 choices in the Ramayana. 5 choices. We talk about consent, agency, everything. So I'm going to play this game with you. Tell me her first choice. She doesn't choose a husband. That's not her choice. Yes, ma'am? First choice. First choice. Yes.
Go to the forest.
Very good. The first, sorry, I'm sounding very professorial, but the first question, the first choice is she's told by the husband, stay back, I'll go to the forest because I have to go to the forest. Tum rahiye, raho, ghar mein raho, it's comfortable. And she says, no, I will come with you. First choice. Second choice, guesses the most popular. The crossing the Lakshman Rekha. I mean, and I always tell people, a hungry man comes in front of your house, will you feed them? And that's what she does because she's like, there's a hungry person. I have 2 choices. Stay within and be safe. Step out and feed someone hungry. That it happens to be a criminal is not her problem. It's his problem. She is feeding a hungry man and he has forever ruined the reputation of hungry, real hungry people. So she's like, there's a hungry man I'm going to feed. That is more important than my own security. So she makes a choice. Not all choices work out in your favor. You can be kind and people can take advantage of your kindness. Second choice. Third choice. Even before that. It happens in Lanka. So I'll tell you the story because of short.
Hanuman wants to
Hanuman
bring her back
wants to,
and she
Hanuman
refuses.
wants her to come. She says, just ride on my back and I'll take you back. Katham, story is over. And she says, no. If you save me, my husband's reputation will go down. There a monkey saved his wife. He's a king. What a reputation. She's aware of royal reputation. The fourth choice is where husband says, and this is where the Valmiki Ramayana is very disturbing. He looks at her after and says that, I can't take you back. Reputation has been damaged. How many of you all have seen The Crown? What do you think? Do you think the crown, a queen is lovable or unlovable? You see, when given a choice between family and crown, she always chooses the crown. Ram has to choose the crown over family. 2,000 years ago, Valmiki is telling the same story, and Sita, as Janak's daughter, the daughter of the wisest man in the world, knows that her husband is making this it's a very complex, it's a crown situation. And she's saying, I will come to your city. Do not look down. Don't think your people are so narrow-minded. I think, give them an opportunity. I will come. That's the fourth choice. And the fifth choice, of course, is the famous choice where she refuses to return, saying, I will not go where I'm not respected. 5 choices. And I think this is, when you tell the story like this to younger people, not in the boring old way, ki kitni bichari sundar thi. You know, this kind of, I think we project our own values through the Ramayana, which is not what the scriptures do. Valmiki never told the Ramayana like this. Vyas, at least when I read it, I'm like, this is not what somebody else is telling. The storyteller makes a big difference. I always tell parents, you don't have, just look at the story. Don't change the story. I found these 5 choices, and these are not my creations or imaginations or reimaginations. This is our culture. Our culture tells us the story. That 5 choices were made, and they were difficult choices. They're not easy stories. They're difficult stories. Sita's choices, Ram's choices. That's why I gave you the example of crown. Crown is the easiest way to explain Ramayana now. We need England's help.
No, I do agree, because, you know, after seeing The Crown, I myself had this realization that she had to put duty before family every time. Every time, no matter, even if it involved her closest sister, her own sister who had grown up with her, but when it came to doing the duty, royal duty, she was doing that. And in many a case, you know, when there were choices she could have made regarding what the Prime Minister's decisions were, she held back and allowed that guy to go ahead and make the mistakes, which she could have prevented, but she chose not to because the Constitution did not give her the power to do that. She had to hold back. And I also believe, like, you know, Sita is one of those characters who really displays what independence can mean, what self-independence can mean. Imagine being left in a forest when you are expecting children and with nothing at all to support you. The fact that she managed to do that and do that in the best of manners and subsequently refused to again do a Agni Pariksha and instead chose to stay or go away, that is a really strong, independent woman, absolutely uncaring about the fact that, you know, she's dependent on somebody or the other. She's not. She's not dependent. She's very independent.
I think that's how you tell the stories. So that, I think, when I see some of the soap operas on television, which they show, and I worked with a lot of television colleagues, and they would say, no, audience wants this. I say, you have to nudge audiences. They also want The Crown, right? They're also watching a film like The Crown. You have to nudge them. You have to give them the familiar, but take them to the unfamiliar. Show them a different way of seeing, but it's a challenge. And I think for the younger generation, storytelling, and that's what I try to do in these sessions. When I'm given the opportunity to talk, I always tell people, I'm going to tell you the stories as they are told in the scriptures, not as the patriarchal filter which has happened over the last 500 years or 1,000 years. This is what was written 2,000 years ago. I can show you verse after verse after verse. And it's just amazing that. And we are inheritors. These are our ancestors who told these stories, right? We don't know who they were, but they were our ancestors. We are all children from those spaces. That's my stories. Anything else? I can tell you many, many stories, but I'm like, I need a lead. Give me a lead and I'll go there.
So, you know, even if you go into Mahabharata, and if you see the way Satyavati negotiated her marriage, okay? So there are umpteen such other examples where the women have demanded rights and they have been yielded to. So tell us a few more of those.
Yeah. So, you know, Mahabharata is like full of these hidden women. And they, you know, in fact, Mahabharata actually chronicles systematically the loss of freedom of women in a very interesting way. So I want to tell you how Mahabharata is designed. And remember, I'm telling you a story which is 2,000 years old. So that's amazing, right? The first story is of a character called Ganga. She's the river goddess. She says, Shantanu comes to her. The king comes to her and says, I want to marry you. She says, I would love to marry you, but full freedom after marriage. I can do whatever I want. And he's so smitten by her that he says, okay, full freedom after marriage. And so she says, okay. And every time she gets married and every time she bears a child, she kills the child. She kills the child because she's a celestial person and she says this earthly life is useless, celestial life is better, because she has access to more information than he does. And he's like, what are you doing? You are a child killer, you're a woman, you should take care of the babies. So, I'm giving a better life, kill him. First, so she has that kind of freedom and the king can't handle it. He marries the second time. This time it is the second wife, is a fisherwoman, not the goddess, but a fisherwoman. But she negotiates. She says, I will marry you provided my sons become the king. So negotiation has come again, second time. So first, complete freedom. Second, my children shall be kings. Then comes the next generation. Satyavati, how she treats her own daughters-in-law, because her sons turned out to be nincompoops, completely useless. So she gets women kidnapped so that they can't get wives for them, so he gets wives kidnapped. So you see a shift in the story. You have Amba, Ambika, Ambalika who are abducted and forced to marry men who are lesser. Then comes the next generation. After Amba, Ambika, Ambalika, that's the Pandu. I don't want to get the details. The next generation, you have Gandhari who blindfolds herself to share her husband's blindness. The following generation, you have Draupadi who marries 5 husbands because she asks God, I want a husband with 5 great qualities. He should be king, he should be strong, he should be skilled, he should be beautiful, and he should have great conversations. And God says, no man has all 5 qualities. Sorry. But you see this story in a systematic way over generations, and you suddenly see it is actually documenting the end of civilization. And I thought that's a very interesting thing. But one woman is forgotten in the Mahabharata again, is a lady called Hidimba. In the forest, when Bhima is killing all the Asuras, and he's killing because they are bad people, the Asura's sister, Hidimbi, comes and says, stop killing. Let's find a way to live together. I will provide you with food, clothing, shelter. Please don't kill my brothers. And she takes care of the entire Pandava clan. She feeds them, takes care of them. There's peace in the forest. There's jungle mein mangal. And then Kunti comes and says, this is a good life, but it's not suitable for my ambition because I want my sons to be kings. So leave her and come, let's go back and find a woman who will help you become a king. And therefore Draupadi comes into the picture and she eclipses Hidimba. The one who brought peace and prosperity to the jungle is not talked about. It is the warmongering which is sought because ambition. Kunti wants her son. She says, I have raised you to be kings. And I want a daughter-in-law who will make you king. And the funny thing is, when Draupadi comes into the story, Kunti disappears. There is no reference to Kunti after that once Draupadi comes. So when you look at Hidimba's story, you look at Kunti's story, and you look at Draupadi's story, you see such complexities. These are stories told 2,000 years ago. Makes you think, right? Thank you.
Maybe if I can pick up on the 2,000 years ago comment, excuse me, sorry, and say that we always imagine that we're living in an era that's never been lived in before, and there's so much volatility, and there's so much change, and there's so much going on, and yet already in the last 10 minutes we found so many parallels. Could I ask you for a few more parallels that we could borrow from 2,000 years ago that would be as applicable today?
So what has happened over time is technology has changed. So we had, I was talking about generative AI. I mean, today afternoon, I was first time figured out what is predictive AI and what is generative AI. And I just realized, oh yeah, that's the difference. It's so simple. But we don't realize these words are used, but what they actually mean. Technology is changing, but people are not changing. Just because I have a cell phone doesn't make me a better person. And I think that EQ part is an important part to remember because technology doesn't change the world. People do. And real growth has happened because we are looking at a world where we are looking at women not as secondary citizens, but as citizens. Not primary or anything, we're just people with different gendered bodies. We all are Atmas. We are all just souls living this world, and we all have different kinds of bodies. I have a different kind of body. You have a different kind of body. Someone is born in a rich family. And I think this point comes across repeatedly in storytelling. I have always wondered why in the Ramayana they say Sita is Janak's daughter. He doesn't play an important role in the story, but Janak is an important character in mythology because he is associated with the Upanishads. And all the wisdom of India really comes from the Upanishads. And Janak is supposed to be the great, and his daughter is told in the Ramayana. And it's very interesting that Janak comes from a kingdom of 4 daughters. And Dashrath comes from a kingdom of 4 sons. And Janak is considered the wise one, not Dashrath. The daughters go, and there's a line which is a folk tradition where he looks at his daughter, and because Janak never takes care of her, never comes back, she never goes back to him, he disappears. He looks at her and says, go, wherever you go, may you bring, it's called Mangalya. Wherever you go, great Mangalya with you. Take it with you. She's not saying, may you be happy wherever you go. He says, may you bring happiness wherever you go. And I think that's such a great gift that I have made you so capable that wherever you will go, even in the forest, you have to raise your children alone. Single mothers are a repeated conversation in mythology. Love and Kush, raised by Sita. Pandavas, raised by Kunti alone in the forest. And the most interesting story in the Mahabharata is of a girl called Shakuntala. Her father is a rishi. He says, I don't want to take care of the children because I have a higher purpose. So with higher purpose, all men go away. The mother, who is Menaka, she's an Apsara. She says, I also have a higher purpose. I want to sing and dance in the heavens. So she leaves the child in the forest. Mythology is full of stories where fathers and mothers are busy doing their own things. But the children turn out to be exceptional. Because there's always someone who takes care of them, because Shakuntala is picked up. Shakuna is really a vulture. So she's found under the wings of a vulture who don't eat her but protect her. And she's raised by a single man called Kanva. So single father. Shakuntala's father is a single man. Is this 21st century, AD or BC? Where the father and mother go their own way. The Apsara goes away, the Rishi goes away, but there is someone called Kanva who is not performing his gendered role and raises the daughter. And I want to tell you something interesting about Shakuntala because it's again an important story and how stories change over time. And many people have written about this. In the Mahabharata, the Shakuntala and Kalidasa's Mahabharata are very different. When Amar Chitra Katha tells the story of Shakuntala, it chooses Kalidasa's story, and that is strategic. Because in the Kalidasa Mahabharata, she falls in love with this handsome prince called Dushyanta who goes away, and when she becomes pregnant, she's told, you have to go to your husband. And when she goes to the husband, he refuses to recognize her for whatever reason, and she is heartbroken, and there's a lot of this Sanskrit drama about a heartbreak. This is the Kalidas version, which is 500 AD. But let me tell you the Mahabharata version. She tells her father, I am pregnant, and he says, wonderful, and doesn't ask who is the father. The child is born with the father. He is raised in the ashrama. As she gives birth to the child grows up. The child tells the mother, who is my father? It says, okay, I'll take you to your father, come. And she takes him to the father and introduces him to Dushyanta and says, Dushyanta, this is your son Bharata. And he says, I've never had relations with you. And he keeps saying all these kind of things. That I don't know who you are. You want my property. You want my crown. You are a criminal woman. You're lying. And she looks at him and says, calm down. I'm not interested. The son wants to know who the father is. If the father doesn't want to accept the son, so be it. I have done my duty. I'm going to the forest. This is the Mahabharata version, not the Kalidasa version. Which is the version that Amar Chitra Katha chooses to tell, reveals how stories are changed over time. And this is true then and true now, where storytellers are now called media, but they are the bards. The bards of kings, the Kalidasas.
True. And again, as you said, these are really empowered women. Now, as I said earlier, with generative AI coming in, with so much of the world going digital, and so much that can be now done, which was earlier needed people to fill up their days with repetitive work so that people would go back home and feel that they had achieved a lot. Actually, they had achieved very little because they're all, if they are not file pushers, then they're email pushers or whatever else, Teams pushers, whatever you use, okay? So instead of that, we now need people who will bring in empathy, who will bring in EQ. And do you have a story in mythology where, you can draw some parallels with that kind of leadership and what it means, how that is so much more enriching or empowering than just, a sheer brute strength?
So, you see, one of the things that you see in the story, it's not exactly this, but the aggression which we valorize in storytelling, and nowadays, I was just playing, I play this game, where nowadays the vocabulary is Shark Tank. And the vocabulary is about war room strategies and market penetration. And we wonder why there's toxic masculinity. Look at the language. And then we talk about the lotus pond. And lotus pond is where the Lakshmi resides, where prosperity resides. And traditionally in India, if you go to, I just realized the story because I saw Narasimhan written over here, and I got this, there's a visualization, if you go to Andhra region, where Narasimha temples are located, you never worship Narasimha in his aggressive form. It is considered inauspicious because it's very aggressive, which is many politicians like this kind of aggressive imagery, but in India it's considered amangala. Because mangala happens only when the goddess sits with him and calms him down and says, calm down. The job is done. She calms him down. And the lady who takes the, by the way, the lady who takes the form of Lakshmi in the Andhra tradition comes from a tribal community. She's a Chenchu Lakshmi, she's called. She comes from a tribal community. And she is a bow-wielding lady, and her images are found on temple walls. She's a lady with a bow who comes and calms him down, this wild bloodthirst, because he has to take this form for whatever reason. The story is there. But she says, for Mangala, we need to calm down. And I think this is required. In a world of this repetitive tasks where we are creating, and that creates also aggression, right? You're feeling so useless that you're doing these kind of useless jobs. You are, obviously this kind of turns into this kind of an angry, and you start projecting that in work and life and everything. You need this feminine side which calms you down. I don't say a woman, but I'm saying our feminine side. We all have it. We need to bring that into the workplace, which calms us and brings this energy, which says the purpose of life is to create the lotus pond, not to win the shark race. The point is to create a happy society. And I think new technology, new tools are enabling us to create, hopefully, a happy society where we work together, rather than a competitive society where we are constantly winning, and someone has to lose in order for me to win, which is just, I don't think it's necessary for success.
I think I'm just going to build from there. I know there are many finance people in the room over here, and just in the previous session, I loved the discussion on debit, credit. I'm an accountant myself by training. And debit, credit, and valuation, these are words we use a lot, but your take on it, completely different. So I think it would be wonderful to just share it with everybody here.
Thank you. So India is mythologically, now if you go, mythology is like an operating system. Just as Apple's operating system is different from a Google operating system, although the apps may look the same, we know that the operating system is very different. Mythology is like an operating system. So the Western operating system has the concept of Judgment Day. God is a judge. At the end of the day, you're going to be judged by God. So you have haram, halal. If you break the law, you'll go to Jahannam. If you follow the law, you'll go to Jannat. It's a very simple, linear, which we follow in all audit practices. You're penalized, you're disciplined, reward, recognition. The modern management follows the legal system. It's a legal language which was very popular in West Asia. Now that's the language, so therefore when we use the word right, wrong, so right is halal, wrong is haram, but what happens is people start using the same word for Indian like pap and punya. So when you say pap, they'll say it's wrong and punya is good, but that's a wrong operating system. Indian operating system is an accounting system. the god of death, Yamaraj, is the god of accountants. So everything is about accounting. And debt leads you to Naraka. Naraka is not about wrong, it is about debt. And so debit takes you to hell, credit takes you to paradise, and if you have neither debit nor credit, you get moksha. So no credit also. Credit is paradise, but debit is hell. So it's a financial thing. And there, papa is any action that creates debt and takes you towards hell. And punya is any action which creates credit. And so investing in the market leads you to paradise. And therefore, now you start looking at debit and credit very differently. And one of the things which it struck me that in ancient India, profit was seen as debt. To have more than what you need is debt. So what do you do with your surplus? So Vaikuntha is a very great example given, is where surplus is reinvested in the market. And that creates wealth again. So Lakshmi comes back. And then you again reinvest her back because Lakshmi is chanchal. She doesn't like to be hoarded and locked up. So she has to keep flowing. And the best way to flow is you invest Lakshmi to get returns of Lakshmi and then reinvest her back. And therefore Lakshmi is always moving. So this whole idea of never tie her up. She should always, these are the yogini temples in India. By the way, if you ever travel to Jabalpur or Bhubaneswar, please visit the yogini temples. They don't have a roof. They're not allowed to have a roof because the yogini should not be tied up. She cannot be tied up. If she wants success in life, I always tell people when they think I'm some kind of a jadugar, but I say that it means let the energies flow. And so Lakshmi has to flow. So in order to flow, they said, Papa is debt, Punya is credit. So keep doing credit, keep doing investment, and work with SEBI and everybody to make the profit. And that's what Lakshmi is all. That's how lotus ponds are created. That lotus pond is Vaikuntha.
So one other thing, and we have just about 3 minutes time, just wanted to ask you. You had said that charity is not the right concept in the Eastern culture. Because what happens is when you do charity, the person receiving the charity goes into debt, okay? You may get credit, but that person goes into debt. So you are not coming to a balanced position, which is ultimately our goal in life. You need moksha, which is the balanced position. So you said it's not charity. And if you even look at the Western way of doing things, they say teach a man to fish, don't feed him a fish. Yes. Okay. So how would you correlate these two? And what do you think the aim of charity should be? What would it actually be? What would be the right way of doing that? As you say, yeah, you can invest it back, but are there other ways that you can give back to society where you really and truly are sort of empowering people, and it's not just a kind of a giving for the sake of the fact that you are supposed to, or you think, you have a little too much and you need to get that credit?
You see, charity, the reason I started thinking about it and started reading more is I kept hearing the word give back to society. It is almost as if you spend half your life taking from society and now there is some guilt complex, so you give it back and you give like 0.1% and say, oh, look how much I've done, and make a hospital and put your name on top of it and say that, oh, look how wonderful I am. When you're not, because that's 1% of your wealth. So the point of the story is that why are you giving back to society is the idea is you're reinvesting in society. And normally, to use financial vocabulary, long-term investments. You may not see the benefit in your lifetime, but you'll see it 3 generations. The olive tree planted in this lifetime doesn't bear fruit in this lifetime. We are all short-term thinkers. We've been trained to short. Everything is about I should get a return today. But an education institute doesn't give returns today. It gives returns 10 years from today. And I think the ability to take high-risk ventures. After a certain level, it's so easy to participate in high-risk ventures, long-term ventures which will not give you a result for the next 4 generations. And if you don't think like that, this ability to think long term, at least if you have resources, you can do that because you can afford to lose it. You have wealth for like 5,000 generations. And you don't think like that. When you see someone with surplus wealth not able to think of the future that they also cannot imagine, it's so tragic. And it's our own growth. So the ability to think deep, and that's why Vishnu is considered Ananta, it's infinite. The ability to change your denominator from 1, which is your lifetime, to 2, which is 2 lifetimes, to 3, which is 3 lifetimes, to 4, till the denominator becomes infinity and you become 0. So it's really the act of charity becomes spirituality. I know time's up, but I'll tell one story because it always helps to explain through a story. The character is of a character called Indradumna. And Indradumna had given a bunch of cows to people. And he thought like he's done good charity, he's given cows to people. But he's in heaven and he's wondering, how come I'm not going out of heaven? Because you're in heaven only till there is credit. And they're saying, oh my God, you have so much credit, you'll never leave heaven. So he says, what have I done? He says, then Indra explains to him that, every time you gave the cows, it kicked up dust. And that created a depression. And in the depression, water accumulated. And it formed a pond. And in the pond, a lotus flower grew. And other animals came, and frogs came, and snakes came, and turtles came. And generation after generation is living in that pond happily, saying it is Indradumna's pond. So many a times it is not the act of giving cows that you did consciously to get paradise that is keeping you there. It is this unconscious act, which you're clueless about, is ensuring you stay in paradise.
That's a great story. And as usual, you're a really great storyteller, but more than that, I think, you related so much to the real life situations that we have, and it has so many layers of meaning, as I said. And as I told you, that artificial intelligence may be talked about as something that's, the panacea of all things, but human creativity and understanding, artificial intelligence is nowhere near it. The layers of meaning that you can get from some of these stories, from some of these, the human creations that has happened over periods of time. It's only for people like him who really have studied it deeply for him to reveal it. And it's great that we have an audience that benefited from it. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, powerful words from even powerful leaders. Can I please request you to stay on stage for a few more moments and step forward for a group picture, please? Well, thank you so much for sharing your unique perspectives on leadership. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that momentous juncture where very shortly we will witness a stellar panel. While we set up for the panel, I just wanted to know, with a show of hands, how many of you are on social media? I'm sure most of us are. All right, so request you to please keep your social media absolutely buzzing. Request you to take a picture, you can share a post, and you can use the hashtag Reimagining LeadHERship, HERship. You can also use the hashtag Economic Times and hashtag Salesforce. Let's create as much traction as possible. And now, ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the rise of a new era in leadership, which is bold, visionary, and powerful. Request you all to please stay glued to your seats because this is a panel that you definitely do not want to miss. Ladies and gentlemen, they say that the glass ceiling is shattered. But truly most of us are just picking up the shards, aren't we? And to set context to this, welcome to the Power Panel, where women are at the forefront of redefining leadership, where limits are defied and new paradigms are forged. Well, get ready for a session that will ignite minds, challenge norms, and celebrate the unstoppable force of women in leadership. And as we are set, holding the strings to this conversation and driving this power panel is Miss Saloni Shukla, Deputy Banking Editor, The Economic Times. Let's welcome her with a thunderous round of applause, please. Welcome, ma'am. I would now like to invite on stage some extraordinary women who are not just leading companies, they are leading change, rewriting narratives, and reshaping the future. Well, from strategy rooms to boardrooms, she has been the driving force behind some of the most trusted brands in our lives. Currently, the managing director and CEO of Colgate-Palmolive India, she brings with her a rich legacy of leadership across the FMCG sector. With prior leadership stints at giants like Hindustan Unilever, well known for her sharp business acumen, consumer-first thinking, and purpose-driven leadership, she is steering Colgate into a bold, future-ready era of innovation and impact. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us the remarkable Miss Prabha Narasimhan. Well, next we welcome a leader who has shattered stereotypes and redefined what it means to lead with strength, grace, and vision. Please welcome the extraordinary Miss Arundhati Bhattacharya, President and CEO, South Asia Salesforce. Once again, welcome, ma'am. Well, joining us on stage now is a leader who's not just at the top. Well, she is a powerhouse in India's financial landscape. She is the chairperson and managing director of PL Capital Group. While commanding an astounding 96% stake in one of the country's most respected financial institutions. With over 35 years of trailblazing leadership, she has transformed PL's institutional retail and advisory business, multiplying their impact and scale many times over. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the phenomenal Miss Amisha Vora. Welcome, ma'am. And to complete this stellar panel, let's welcome a financial strategist whose precision, insight, and leadership have shaped the very landscape of India's capital markets. Well, she is the managing director and head of equity capital markets at JM Financial Institutional Securities Limited. She brings over 19 years of stellar experience and has led more than 226 landmark transactions worth nearly 5 lakh crore. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the remarkable Miss Neha Agarwal. Saloni ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this was the most easiest part of the panel discussion, introducing these women, because honestly, they don't need any introduction. So now begins the tough part. Ma'am, we heard Mr. Pattanaik and his story. So since we are still in the story mode, I want something out from you as well. You've had decades of experience, looking at men and women. Anything that stood out for you in terms of, a woman leader or an interaction with another woman leader that, you really recall that, okay, this is, shaped your leadership journey as well?
Addressing it to me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah, amongst all of these people, the person who gets called ma'am most is me. No matter how hard I try with my own people in Salesforce, where everybody calls everybody by name, which is true for most American companies. These guys still, at the end of it all, they have shortened it to AB ma'am, but it's still AB ma'am. Anyway, so whatever it is. Regarding women leaders and my interaction with them, some of them have been quite outstanding. If you ask me, some of the leaders who went before me in SBI itself, they may have retired as DMDs, but frankly, any of them could have been chairman. It's just that, they didn't have the right amount of time left, or, whatever it is, they were not there at the right time and the right place. But the fact of the matter is, some of them have inspired me hugely because of the resilience they showed. The resilience of staying put in their positions in spite of, multiple challenges that they may have had at home. The kind of leadership they showed. For instance, there is this lady who I refer to very frequently. She's been a great mentor of mine. So this is Bharti Rao. Her brother is well known because he was Jerry Rao, who set up a number of companies, was a part of Citibank. Bharti retired as the DMD CCO, which is the chief of credit. And as you know, in the bank, credit is the glamour role, okay? Now, I have talked to many other CCOs, and like when we were junior officers for any of the bigger loans, we had to go up to a committee, and the CCO is to handle this committee, and we had to present our proposal, and then we'd be asked all kinds of questions. If the replies were, reasonable, or replies satisfied them, then the proposal would get sanctioned. If not, we were told to take it back, either remedy it, or change it, or bring it back in a way which would be more acceptable to the bank. Now, she's the only person that I found who would actually take the trouble of telling the younger officials why they were asking us to make the change and what is the risk that they were trying to mitigate. The only CCO. I have seen at least 3 other CCOs other than her. All of them gave it as orders. They were all men. For them, this is the way you need to do it, go do it, bring it back, and we'll see. For her, it was always a question of taking the time to give us lessons as to what they are not seeing as quite right in the proposal. So I learned so much from those interactions with her. And so did everybody else, by the way, because these were video meetings, where all of the credit officers would be there. We learned so much during her tenure that it taught me one thing, which is that, being a leader is not enough. You also need many a times to give the rationale for the decisions you were taking, not because you were sort of vindicating yourself, but because these are learning moments for people around you. It's very important for us to have that EQ to understand that this is something which I don't need to give as an order. I need to tell the rationale behind it, because if I do that, all of these people will learn, and all of the proposals that will come up will then take care of it, and to that extent, my job as it goes ahead becomes that much lighter. So I think this is something that I learned from her, and this is, I think, what women necessarily bring to the table. They bring to the table the ability to take a little bit of time ahead so that, a lot of their time later gets saved, only because they want to make it inclusive. They want to make it collaborative. They are not the one who want to command and control. Command and control is easy, but it doesn't make your job lighter. It doesn't make your job easier. Command and control is very much a kind of a show of strength, and you have to continuously strive to remain in that particular position of strength. Whereas if it is collaborative, the strength automatically comes to you. So even, by the way, when she retired, the bank wouldn't let her go. She remained as an advisor in the area of doing certain reforms in the HR area, because she had also been CDO. So I know of so many credit guys who used to still consult her and ask her that, ma'am, if you can please go through the proposal and tell us what are the weaknesses. Because, her knowledge and her capability of giving you that part of her knowledge was enormous. So that's what we have modeled ourselves on. Those are the kinds of people we have modeled ourselves on. And I think, we've all benefited out of that.
We are standing on the shoulder of such giants. Prabha ma'am, if you could take that as well, since we are celebrating women, any woman role model, anybody stood out for you in your journey?
So I think I've had the privilege, like she so exaggeratedly said, of working for 2 fantastic organizations. But I started, my very first job actually was Lakme brand manager. Absolutely dream job. My daytime job used to be to try on shades of nail polish and see whether the shade should make it into the collection or not. So it was a really tough job. But having said that, my first boss was a woman, a lady called Sonia Singh. And the one thing I've learned from her, which has stayed with me throughout, was She would have you in the room. She would set really high standards. If you didn't meet that standard, she would chew you out. And you would be on no uncertain terms that you hadn't met the benchmark that she had set. You would step out of the room and you would be the best of friends. You could go and have vada pav with her, you could have chai with her, you could have a conversation, you could discuss the latest movie. It didn't matter. And she so wonderfully separated task conflict from relationship conflict. And I think sometimes we mix the two up and we think, therefore, either we should be nice to everybody, which then doesn't get the job done, or we feel like we must be aggressive and, burn all bridges and all relationships, which is, of course, not great for either the person with whom you're fighting or yourself. But I think there's a beautiful distinction between task conflict and relationship conflict, which I think has stayed with me for, ever since.
Ma'am, Amisha ma'am.
I would like to talk about my mother, because I think she was the most versatile person. And while we were growing up, as what he was telling stories, at my lunch table or dinner table, whenever the family used to meet, we used to have a story. And a story always made us fearless because it came down ultimately to we face our karma. Our action gets us our future. And so many of our stories within our Jain, because I'm a Jain, brings about how our thought process, our action leads to our path in life. And that fearlessness which was created in us, trust me, in my entire career, and being in the financial world, people say we always meet with another men only. Be it, and I've been into institutional research and sales, so my clients used to be initially in US, Asia, India. And that believing in yourself helped me so much that throughout this career, the kind of welcome to evaluate that I used to give was that being a Jain, they would also find out a place where I can get Jain food across the world. Trust me, that is the kind of believing in yourself makes a difference. And I will just point a few things here. While we were coming here, I asked her that you are a women leader. What do you think really is the difference between a men leader and a women leader? And the answer is there's no difference. And this entire journey also, trust me, there is just no difference being a woman or a man. Absolutely no difference. Just get driven by your passion, and I think this road finds itself. And one more thing which I'll talk for her in particular, because see, she gave a fantastic message, but she didn't talk about herself. She is a leader, a legend, but she spoke about someone else. But when she got the place at SBI, the financial market said that SBI has now got a tigress. And that's the power I think we all women bring on the table. And this is what I wanted to say.
Neha, can you tell us a little about fearless and tearless?
Well, I'll give a lot of that ode to my mother as well. So my mom's a cancer surgeon in India, and she leads a very prominent hospital. So one thing which I learned from her, apart from fearless and tearless, is empowering. The fact that we're two sisters, so she had to, at any point of time, balance life. I'm not going to talk about work-life balance, but just balance in life. And the only way she could do it is throughout my childhood, and while I work, she told me, empower. And the only way you can empower is when you have a team which is smarter than you. Because then you become a decision enabler rather than a decision maker at every point of time. And I think that's where the balance struck so well. Because I think women is just our DNA. We're just more secure as human beings. And that helps us to make the work environment a more inclusive environment, more collaborative. And I think that's really where the Tearless, Fearless coincides, is just one mantra: empower, empower your team. And the only way you can do it, please get people smarter than you over there to learn more. That's all.
So yeah, that's a lovely story. So I'll go with AB ma'am as well. Ma'am, how are women reimagining leadership? You know, you were talking about generative and predictive AI. We are working in that era, but we are also, less territorial, want to be more collaborative. Can you share your thoughts on how we are reimagining leadership?
So as I said, what I'm finding with GenAI, because we work quite a bit of it with it, especially with the autonomous agents. What happens with the autonomous agents is now, if you are able to link it to the right data sources, and then if you're able to use the AI engine on top of that, along with the reasoning engine, then basically what they can generate are queries and answers that are very, very relevant to the questions that are being asked, okay? However, as I told you, they rely on the data sources. The base is still the data source that you are giving them, okay? So if you look at our own organization, we have a helpline called help.salesforce.com, and we use the generative AI layer on that. Today, it's completely on the generative AI layer. And we found that when we first started about five and a half months back, we were getting 44% first call resolution, okay? Today, it is 84% plus first call resolution, with only 2% of the queries being passed on to manual agents. And the reason for that is we have been tweaking and we have been guiding the agents. So for instance, what we have done is we have realized that the data sources we were giving them initially, which were mainly product data, release data, all of that was not sufficient. So we have now we have started feeding them with the 2.5 million solved cases from before, which we have in our records, and which obviously are giving the agents a surefire way of knowing what worked, what didn't work, what are the repetitive kind of queries that mostly come, how can you generate the answers faster, and to that extent it's made them really, it's making them smart. There is machine learning, so every time there is a reiteration, they become smarter. However, you remember that it's the data source at the bottom that's really very important. And that is where I think women bring something else to the table. Because the things that we have as women, I think the strengths that we bring to the table, one is our ability to listen. Over millennia, we have been mostly listeners rather than the people who were speaking, okay? And as we have been listeners, we have learned to interpret signals which many others fail to see because they are talking, they are not listening. We can, from listening to people, interpret many things that the person is actually wanting to say. So even if they are saying something, whether there is something behind it, whether they really mean what they are saying or it's just a, just a gesture, women are able to interpret that better. That's been my experience. The second thing which I think women do very well is the fact that they can multitask, okay? And that is something that's also very important today. It is important to be masters at what you do, but it is also important to be able to look at the ecosystem. Because in anything that you do, the ecosystem matters. And we are people that are multitasking. Because at the same time as you are solving the problem for a client, you're also getting a message from your daughter saying she's feeling unwell and she needs a doctor's appointment. At the same time, your husband is messaging you asking, have you got an OTP? Because the package is at the door. And then at the same time, you have the caretaker saying, you said that we could have this, but then, this particular ingredient is not at home. It all happens at the same time. And believe me, we are managing everything together. okay? In the public sector, by the way, you know, we do have a secretarial help that helps us take care of these as well. In the private sector, you don't. You have to manage everything yourself, okay? So to that extent, I would say that multitasking is something that we are born doing, all right? And that is a major strength that we have, which we should actually leverage. We should not take it as something that's a drag on us. We should take it as something which enables us to think on various streams at the same time, so that you are not only doing the work allocated to you, you're also thinking of ideas that can impact teams that are next to you. Because the more influence that you have, not only on your team, but in the ecosystem, the better you will be known, the more you will be valued as a person who is very important for the organization, okay? The other thing, of course, that I think women are, is they are less territorial, because we were never meant to be that way. Men were the hunter-gatherers, and therefore they had to be territorial in order to protect the food supply. Women were not, and therefore, you know, we were never territorial, and that gives us the advantage of being collaborative. And believe me, I have seen what collaboration can do. 2 plus 2 can make 4, it can also really make 22 when you bring about collaboration. So collaboration across the space, even when I got into Salesforce, one of the reasons, by the way, was because we were doing all kinds of things here in Salesforce. We were doing sales, we were also doing global hub support, we were also doing R&D, we were doing product development, we were doing engineering, and all of these, by the way, none of them knew each other. None of the teams knew each other, none of them had the same DNA. They were all reporting to bosses sitting, God knows, from Timbuktu to wherever, and you know, half the time nobody knew who the person in the next desk was. The one thing that I brought into Salesforce when I got in was that we are one Salesforce. And believe me, that message of being one Salesforce has worked so well, in the sense that every single person now has the other person's back, okay? Earlier, there used to be parties on the floor where only one team would be celebrating something, something they've delivered on time, or some targets have been met. The others were out of it. Today, when we celebrate together, okay? Today, when we look at things, we always try to see how we can be more collaborative. Even if they are product teams, they want to meet our clients. Even if they are sales and distribution, they want to know the engineers so that they can present them to their clients and give the technical business straight to them, okay? So the collaboration is something that comes naturally to us. Again, because that's the way we have been brought up over generations in order to be able to survive. And that, I think, is also a major strength that we bring to the table. So while, you know, as you go up, you lose whether you are a man or a woman, it doesn't matter as long as your leadership is good. But these are the inherent strengths that we bring to the table. And that's why I want you to ensure that you are mentoring the people who are below you, the ladies who are below you, you are mentoring them and telling them these are the strengths you have. You can do these things. Don't give up. Stay put. Go up the ladder. Because that's where we want you to be. You know, it is time for us to make our place in the world. And there is no better time than now, when repetitive jobs, when the grunt jobs are no longer something that needs to be, you know, repetitively done. We have the right brain activity, you know, as much activated as it can be. The feminine traits in men are far less. The masculine traits in women, by the way, are far more, along with the feminine traits. So, and that's what gives us a strength. We need to realize that we are strong and we are more than equal, and we should not feel that, you know, we kept talking about the imposter syndrome. There is nothing like an imposter. Everything that you have got it because you deserve it. Absolutely believe in that. Every single thing that you've got, you deserve it, and never play a victim. You are not the victim. It doesn't matter. Maybe at some point of time, people may lose their jobs. Should they become the victim? Instead, look inside and see what you could have done better. Take the lessons away from it. Don't let failures go to waste. make failures the pillars or the steps for your next success. That's what I'd continue to say. And as a leader, I think, most people over here know all of this, but it's good to be reminded about it, because what we want is, as leaders, you need to pass on these messages to people below you so that they stay in the job, so that they go through the entire journey and really live up to potential.
Neha, can I bring you in? As a young leader, there are different set of challenges that you face. If you talk loudly, it's seen as aggression. If you are ambitious, it's a bad word. What are the insecurities that you have overcome, and the challenges that you have faced, and how you are sort of reshaping leadership?
One thing which earlier was always considered a weakness was being vulnerable, right? And I actually don't think being vulnerable is a weakness. I think it's a great credibility definer for a leader, especially a woman leader, because there have been many situations in investment banking where, earlier it was always considered as the leader needs to know it all, that a leader needs to have all the answers. But I don't think that's true. And taking your point on being collaborative, the only way we used to face these challenges as a woman leader is really, is it that we need to know it all? And that's the point of time when there are mandates we lose them maybe because of overconfidence, sometimes not addressing the root cause. And we've sat together as a team, we've discussed it, we've analyzed what were the problem areas, not being a control freak, but just trying to get each one's idea in, and the next time around we won it with a bang. So I think what is really important is I think it's a strength to be able to go out there and be vulnerable with your team. There's no point being a person who has to have it all. And I think that's one thing which has changed a lot for us, at least at JM.
Amisha ma'am, EQ, basically earlier was seen as a stigma, now is a secret sauce. So how are you seeing EQ and, reshaping business and leadership?
I think that has always been very important, and it will continue to remain very important. And within that, I think getting buying in from your team and making them equally motivated makes all the difference. It's only when the vision, the dream that you're seeing is being seen by as many, that's when the work becomes easy and the goal becomes easier to achieve. And in that, apart from all the points that she narrated, I think one more thing which really helps is being absolutely authentic in your communication. If you at leadership do not entertain your own personal egos, your achievement in winning arguments, rather being always focused on what you are set out to achieve, I think that creates a culture of authentic communication, no criticism, but feedback. And that leads the team to a virtuous cycle where everybody really looks forward to achieve. So that's my one bit which I wanted to really add.
Prabha ma'am, can I bring you in here? Can you speak, about legitimizing ambition? Because it's absolutely like, corner mongering that you see in offices. Oh my God, she's ambitious. And it's a stigma. So how do you, as a leader, legitimize this?
So I think, it is quite strange, and I was reading of, I think it was a social experiment somewhere where they had put up a picture of a woman and said, ambitious woman underneath, and they'd put up a picture of a man and said, ambitious man, and then asked people to describe what that person would be like. And as far as the women were concerned, words like bossy, arrogant, these are a lot of the words that came along with some positive words, of course, but there was certainly a mixture. Whereas when you put it next to a man, it certainly sounds like go-getter, he's going to change the world, and I look up to him, and isn't he cool? And it was much more positive. And I think, women have as large a role to play in changing this as men have. So firstly, I think you need to give yourself the permission to be ambitious. There is actually nothing wrong with being ambitious. There's such tremendous capability that everybody has, and quite honestly, I don't think there's a lot that can stop anybody in this room and beyond if you truly put your mind to something and say, I'm going to do it. You just need to give yourself the permission to say that I'm going to do it, and it's okay for me to do it. And I think the second thing for me, and I'm going to give you a personal story here, I actually live in Chennai. I work here in Mumbai. I've done this now for 10 years. I tell myself that I'm the pioneer of hybrid working. But the only reason I'm able to do this is actually because my husband is a very hands-on parent. And so a lot of the heavy lifting of the stuff that gets done at home gets done by him. And if he wasn't able to do that, or if he chose not to do it, or if we couldn't agree that he would do that, there's no way I could do this. And so this idea that I need to be able to run an office, run my home, manage my children, make sure that the maid is okay. If you have pets, ensure that the pet is fine. In-laws are taken care of. I personally think that's a little bit of a myth. It's not possible actually to have it all. And there's nothing wrong in asking for help. And I think that when you ask for help, you'll be surprised. It's certainly out there and you will find it.
So clearly behind every successful woman is a man who is extremely hands-on. AB ma'am, can you comment on work-life balance? It's become a controversial topic with, latest, controversy around film actors asking for, lower work hours. But is there a balance, and how do you strike it?
So again, I don't think there is something called work and something called life. Because both of them flow into each other. And one way of balancing it is to really love your work, as well as ensure that your life also has, meaning to it, okay? So if you ask me, there are times when you prioritize work. There are times when you prioritize office. And like she said, you need to be able to ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help at all. And you need to ensure that you have just as good a team in the office as you have at home, okay? And this feeling that you are indispensable, either in the office or at home, get rid of this. You're not indispensable anywhere, okay? And if you're not indispensable anywhere, then it's quite possible that if you have the right kind of teams, and if you're sharing everything with their teams and ensuring that the teams are sharing everything with each other, that there will be absolutely no gap, even if you have to step away for certain periods of time. So I often tell this story about when my daughter was about 8 years old. And I say this because a lot of women, they say that they constantly have this guilt. Even in the first session, people were saying that we constantly have this feeling of guilt, that we are not doing the right thing or we are not being there. So she was about 8 years old. I had gone to Sydney. I was coming back by way of Hong Kong. And when I arrived at Hong Kong, there was a typhoon that was hitting. So all flights were cancelled. And unfortunately, the day after was my daughter's birthday. Her birthday is on April 30th. And because the Lunar New Year was on 1st of May, there was not one more ticket to be had. So our flights got cancelled. We couldn't get tickets till after the 1st of May. So there was no way I was going to get home for her birthday. And obviously, as a mother with a young child, I was burdened with guilt, okay? So then I decided I'll set my guilt aside. What I did was I called up some of my friends and asked them to take her out for lunch, okay? And then we used to live in these colonies, where a lot of the SBI family members were there. I called up my spouse's colleagues and told them that she has a party. She's already invited some people. Could you supervise that party for me, please? And told my husband that just oversee everything and make whatever arrangements are required. And she loved beads then. She even loves it now. So I went around Hong Kong on that one day that I had in Hong Kong, and I bought her the largest box of beads ever. It was so large it wouldn't even fit into any of my suitcases, and I had to carry it separately. But then I arrived a day after her birthday, 2 days after her birthday. And when I arrived, it was early morning. I woke her up and I gave her that box of beads as her birthday present. And today, if you ask her, did she really miss me? And what is her recollection of the birthday? She said she had one of the best birthdays because the aunties took her to lunch and she was allowed to have ice cream for lunch, okay, and nothing else. The other aunties supervised all the games and they were really very nice about it because there were so many of them and she had a great time. And she remembers the box of beads because it's the largest one she ever got. So that's her recollection. Her recollection is not one of me not being around or of resentment that I was not around. Okay? So the fact that we keep telling ourselves that we are indispensable, we need to be there, they will miss us. Not true. Not true every time. Yes, if they are unwell, they will miss us. But if they are well, if other things are getting taken care of, the only thing is I needed to reach out for help to a number of people. And they were glad to give it. And I'm so thankful for that because I've been able to create that ecosystem that comes together to give it. Even now, you know, if she's going for an event, she needs some dress, some time to buy dress, and I'm somewhere else, I'm not able to give the time. I was asked one of my friends to accompany her. She goes and buys what she needs. And, you know, that works. So you have to create that ecosystem not just at work, but also at home. Very important that teamwork happens at home as well as at work. The team members will be different, obviously. But if you don't do that, then you are really stressing yourself out unnecessarily. You're carrying too large a burden. And like anybody else will tell you, you know, you can lift a 3 kg dumbbell once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 8 times, 12 times, 15 times, and I tell my instructor enough. I can't do it anymore. Okay? So it's like that. If you keep holding the burden in your hand all the time and you don't let it down, it's going to tire you out hugely. And it's not going to allow you or give you permission to proceed, to go ahead. So you need to give yourself the permission to not be there when it's required, to do what is required of you, either at home or at office. And believe me, there is a lot of help in the ecosystem. You just need to ensure that you are creating those teams. You are doing something for them also if you get a chance or if there is a need. And things work out. Ways work out.
Neha, can I bring you in this topic? What do you feel about work-life balance? Is there a way to strike it?
Honestly, I don't take both of them as mutually exclusive. I think work is life, and I've mentioned this at the beginning, I think it's a lot to do with overall balance in life, right? Because at some point of time, you cannot be at work and say, okay, I'm not a daughter, I'm not a mother, I'm not a sister. You cannot be at home and just completely detach yourself of the responsibilities that you've undertaken as a leader. But balance is something, and I'll just, at the cost of being repetitive, is the only way you strike it is, it's like a Jerry Maguire moment, you know, when you suddenly realize, oh, you're loving what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you'll strike that balance. And one thing which has worked for me is, you know, taking cue from being vulnerable is asking for help. I have no qualms. I pick up the phone. It could be my mom. It could be my partner. It could be anyone. Please back me up over here. And we need to get out of that guilt. I'll give you a small, an example is just being a mother is a kid's annual day concert. So we all have to attend sometimes. There could be a challenge. I was traveling and I couldn't make it. And it's really sad, but sometimes women make certain comments. They're like, you know, so many times fathers don't come and they're like, it's fine. Mothers don't come. Oh my God, she's not taken the responsibility well. How can she miss an annual day concert for her work? She's selfish. But now I think things are changing. You get yourself. Believe me, my team from office went for the annual day concert. I had my sister, my mother-in-law, my mother, and my son doesn't remember anything. He had such a great time because he was taken care of, he was pampered. So I just think it's a lot to do with ask for that help. It's no longer a weakness. And it's really worked for all of us to balance it.
So we are not indispensable, like ma'am was saying. So we just have less than 3 minutes. So I just want to bring in Prabha ma'am and Amisha ma'am on this topic. Mentorship. Basically, we have as leaders to give advice, but how can mentorship move beyond advice? What more can be done to empower women?
I think even in this mentorship, the most important thing, and which I'll just pick up a few examples which I've come across. Many a times, my lady colleague would come in my cabin, eyes full of tears, and they would say that this is what some harsh words have come, or maybe they don't deserve and they've got something. And the first thing I say, please think, if something would have happened to your man colleague, would he come crying to me? Do you think that's possible? No. Then why do you really need to think emotionally about it? And when we reason out and dig a bit more, that process unravels within people the power that they have. And the unraveling of that power that each of us we enjoy leads us, apart from mentorship, to actual realization that it is the choices that we make. And he also narrated that years and years back, it is the choices that women make, and we are as free to make choices. Apart from that, because we lead organizations, we have to definitely create circumstances, policies, processes that also supports women in actually taking charge of their lives. We were just discussing one of the things that now women get 6 months for their maternity leave, and many organizations, including ours and I think hers, that there is a paternity leave of 3 months. And if you do not have, but I do agree that there are many such actual steps that we will have to take to facilitate women who are ambitious, they really want to be achieving what they dream of. We have to create that environment where they can really get to that. I'll go back to one last question that all of them were discussing about their motherhood. And my bit in that is that the same thing which I now use in my office or with my colleagues has been my way of doing things, that is authentic communication with my own son. And there were many such occasions when I had to definitely choose between giving that importance to
Yeah.
I didn't get it. So giving importance to what should be really done. And what I really used is posing that question to them. And that's how, and making them understand, if I do this, this is how things will work for me or my career or my work. But if I do this, you will really like it, but I'll just look like a little off in my workplace. And the natural answer was, no, mom, you must do this. And that was the buying in. And one more important thing is that, of course, I've always nursed huge guilty conscience of not being there like many other mothers who used to give many more time. But children observe what you do rather than what you talk. And the sincerity and passion is one which they without fail observe. So I'm extremely proud that even my son is extremely highly educated. He is in my business, and also my daughter-in-law, highly educated and in my business. And that says that nursing any kind of guilt for smaller things which others can do and we as working women can't do, but we can do so much more just by doing what we are doing, that we inspire. And my son always said that, Mom, I don't need to really go to an MBA because my MBA happens on dinner table. Authentic communication. What really happened in my day? Whom did I meet? What did I observe? Because being a research analyst, my job typically always is to analyze and arrive at some conclusions. And when you share that That's the insight, the ability to get insight into anything, which is most crucial. So once again, the message goes back that guilt is the last thing that we need to nurse.
Prabha ma'am, last words with you. How do you see mentorship being?
I'm going to keep it really short because time's up and I'm sure everybody's hungry. But I think when you're choosing a mentor, my advice would be firstly to choose one, because I think women tend to be a bit diffident, saying, you know, I can't ask and I can't, and they won't have the time. Second is I would pick somebody where you feel that they authentically have your best interests at heart, to the point where they will tell you what you can and what you cannot do. What you don't want is either a cheerleader or a person who's the doomsday prophet saying you're not capable of anything. So pick somebody who has your back, knows your capabilities, and will help you to get there.
Sure, thank you. That's a wonderful piece of advice. And thank you so much for this thought-provoking discussion.
Wow, a heartfelt thank you to this phenomenal power panel. Can I please request you to remain on stage for a few more moments? Well, thank you so much for your insights and inspiring us with your success stories, adding a dash of sparkle and humor as well. And now to felicitate our wonderful leaders, I would like to invite on stage Miss Sudha Natarajan, Director, Times of India, alongside Saloni ma'am, to please do the honors. Well, let's begin with Miss Prabha Narasimhan, please. Let's begin felicitating. Prabha ma'am, thank you so much for being here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, our applauses should not stop. All right. Next, we would like to felicitate Miss Arundhati Bhattacharya, please. We would also like to felicitate Miss Amisha Vora. Saloni ma'am, if you could join us as well. And Miss Neha Agarwal. If I can now request you all to please step forward for a group picture. Ma'am, can we have you for a group picture? All right, ladies and gentlemen, these leaders have not only redefined success, but reminded us what it is truly to lead with a purpose. So let's give them a huge round of applause as we capture this wonderful memory here with us. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much, ma'am.
I don't want to give a vote of thanks, but you know, I've been to so many events all my life. I've got a lot of gray hair, of course it's colored so you can't make out. But I must tell you, this afternoon and evening has been really the most interesting session I've ever been in. And I hope all of you resonate with me when I say this. Thank you so much, Devdutt. You've been so fabulous. And the lovely, lovely women leaders we've had. We've had Naina Lal Kidwai, who had to leave. We've had a very senior IS officer with us. Of course, we have Prabha, we have Neha, we have, I'm sorry, I'm really bad at remembering names. And Arundhati. I mean, what more could we ask for? This is again not a vote of thanks, but I had to say this because I was so moved the entire afternoon and evening. I hope all of you felt the same. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. And ladies and gentlemen, as we begin to close this powerful and inspiring evening, it is time to express our gratitude to those who made time to join us here and make this evening a huge success. That is you. For the vote of thanks, I would like to invite Miss Sonali Kalyanikar from Salesforce. Let's welcome her with a thunderous round of applause, please, as she graces us on stage. Welcome, ma'am.
What a evening. I'm sure all of you would agree. Amazing panels, two very insightful panels. I think when all the leaders were sharing their personal, experiences, I think we all were relating in our head, oh, this is what happened with me as well. This is, even I missed my child's annual day or a sports day, right? Amazing stories by Mr. Pattanaik, linking mythology to business challenges today, and how women made choices then, 2,000 years back, and how we are making our choices today. Amazing. It's great to have all of you here. Thank you for spending this evening with us. We all have made our choices. I would say let's continue to break the glass ceiling, and let's leave legacy behind us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for summing up this evening so wonderfully. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session. I would like to thank all our leaders for being so dynamic, and most importantly, thank you all for your patience and support. Well, dinner and cocktails are served. Please enjoy your meal and have a wonderful, wonderful evening ahead. Thank you so much.